Every year I try to take a group of the local school kids on a tree walk to teach the kids about some of the native trees in our area. My name is Blair Glenn. I am a certified arborist and the owner of Saratoga Tree Service. We had a group of 17 second graders this year, and we had a lot of fun. We also had about 10 of the parents came along with some of the other siblings. The children were very orderly, and we headed off out into the woods. I talked about a lot of trees, but my goal was to teach the kids about 10 of the native California trees that grow in our area. I challenged the children to learn the trees and test their parents. This is a bay tree that we're talking about. The hike that we went on traveled over towards the lake, which is our namesake for our school, Lakeside School, and we went from one environment down into a completely different environment. We went down into a redwood forest. The children were very well behaved. They got a little excited, but the walk went well. A lot of the children didn't even know what our school was, why it was called Lakeside. It's a beautiful lake. Sadly, it's on private property. We did have permission to go out by this because I know the owner of the adjacent property that we went to, but just a gorgeous property here, and it's owned by the San Jose Water Company. There were so many trees to look at, but I was very, very diligent about sticking to just the native trees. I talked about some of the invasive trees, and I'll talk about that in a bit. We learned about the madrone tree and the redwood tree. We talked about the differences between second growth and old growth and actually found some old original growth stumps. We walked over to an amazing little grove of redwood trees, and it was down by a creek, and it was so nice. As we walked along and talked about each of the 10 trees, I would pick a branch and I would choose one or two of the children and I would designate them that particular tree. As we walked along the trees that we were learning, each of the kids would have to repeat them. Every time we passed another redwood tree, I'd point to the kids and, "What is that?" And they all in unison had to shout out, "Redwood." The tan oak. We talked about the tan oak and how so many of these trees are dying in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I hope that the children can remember this tree. It's a little bit difficult to identify. We also found the remains of an old Boy Scout camp and an amazing hollowed out tree. This tree burned out a long time ago, and the owner of the property took it upon himself to put a roof on this old stump. The kids had a blast. It was a little tight. We took them in there 2 by 2, and they got to look at the insides of the tree. I guess some of the parents went inside too. All in all, it was really fun. We had a great time. There's a little bridge down there that was built out of redwood. We talked about that. The walk went on just a little bit too long. Some of the kids got a little tired, but for the most part, I think they really enjoyed it. We had a few of the kids just had an amazing memory for what we were talking about. We kept repeating over and over and over until at the end of the walk, every one of the kids was shouting out the name of the 10 trees. Now this little girl, she truly amazed me. She was telling me some of the botanical names of the trees before we even mentioned them. We said madrone, and she said, "That's an arbutus." We learned about poison oak. That was one of the first things we talked about. We made such a point of talking about the poison oak and how the kids had to stay away from it, but the kids were picking up leaves and they were going along. At one point, one of the kids picked up a beautiful little red leaf and said, "What kind of leaf is this one?" "Poison oak." I won't mention which kid it was, but if your kid has poison oak, you'll know why. We talked about the exfoliating bark of the madrone trees and how it changes color. The kids were so enthusiastic. Some of the questions just kept coming and coming. It was almost overwhelming for me. As I said before, each of the kids by the end of the day had a branch of one of the 10 trees. Some of the kids, because we had 17, there was 2 kids carrying the same type of tree. I told the kids that when I see them on the school ground, I'm going to point to a tree and ask them what it is. I sure hope they remember. Oh, we spotted a group of bagworms. They were tent caterpillars up on a madrone tree, and we talked about how they grow in these little bags until they all get too big, and then they all explode out and eat the whole tree. I talked about the native trees, but I also talked a lot about some of the trees that were imported and planted. There was a row of eucalyptus trees there. I referred to them as Pucalyptus, and the kids all laughed. But I pointed up into the woods how this row of giants, they're magnificent trees, has spread their seeds, and the native forest in the area surrounding these trees has all these younger eucalyptus trees popping up and encroaching. So we headed back over to the school. It was about a 2-hour walk. Did a little recap, talked to all the kids about the trees, had the kids hold the branches up. We went through them one by one. And you know, for the most part, the kids got it. They really did. They got all 10 trees. So if your children are out taking you on a walk and they point to a tree and ask you, "What kind of tree is this?" hopefully you'll know. But you can rest assured they do. Thank you to Mrs. Orcott. It was a great time.